Good evening, everybody. Hope you're good. Welcome along to another Paranormal Monkey podcast. Hope you're good. It's great to see so many people in the chat already. I hope you're doing well. And obviously, big news from this week. The channel getting over 1,000 subscribers. Thank you so much if you're one of them. Huge thanks as well to Beardo for giving us the shout out, for bumping up those figures. I think I was about 50 away, and then he just decided to get his followers all involved. And so we overtook 1,000, and just so pleased. So thank you so much. And if you're a member and if you joined up to the channel, again, it really does mean so much that to get to this point already. Actually, I was not expecting it. I've got to say, I was fully expecting to get about 500 odd subscribers in a year. Yeah, completely out on that one. And so just thank you so much. And I was almost going to do a live stream just to thank you all personally, every single one of you. I thought that'd be a bit silly, to be honest. Anyway, tonight we have got Joseph Carter in this evening, and for anybody who's or has heard of Bodmin Jail down in Cornwall, it is an amazing location, and Joseph is our man basically tonight. So he's going to tell us all about the history of Bodmin Jail. I've done a few little slides to go along with his chat, but we're going to get through that. We're going to go through the history, the ghost sightings, the ghosts, the eyewitness accounts, all of that kind of stuff. And just as a little added extra, if you are a member of this channel now, because I can say that because we've got a few members, I'm roping in Jem Treadwin, and I'm roping in Diane Chambers, who's I've known Jem ages, been thoroughly involved with Jamaica Inn and Bodmin Jail, and also Diane, who's one of the mods. Shout out to those two, because Diane has had a ghostly experience in Bodmin Jail. So if you're a member, then I'm going to do a little extra interview with Diane, purely for members only, who can tell you all about the ghostly sighting that she actually had. I think it was last month. It's pretty recent. And it was confirmed by Joseph as well, I believe. So let's, rather than leaving him waiting, let's bring Joseph in.
Good evening. Hello.
There he is. Good evening. How are you?
Very good, and well done for the 1,000 subscribers. That's really good stuff.
It was kind of amazing actually, because like I said, I just wasn't expecting it, and so it's just great to kind of get past these little milestones for the channel, because it's a fairly new channel still. Anyway, Joseph, thank you so much for coming on. So you are the paranormal manager for Bodmin Jail. We'll talk about what that role entails later on. Mm-hmm. So in terms of you personally and your link to Bodmin Jail, in terms of, where did it start for you, and how did you get involved, and are you from Cornwall, and how much did you know about Bodmin before you joined them?
Yeah, it's a very strange journey to Bodmin Jail. I was literally prior to being the paranormal manager, I was an out-of-work actor, essentially. I was in and out. I went to drama school to study acting. I ended up doing it all over the world. I was really lucky when I wasn't unemployed. And there was just a period where I was unemployed, and I had worked with like London Dungeons, Merlin Entertainments, Universal Studios, all that sort of stuff. So I loved tourist attractions and designing and working on them and acting in them. And I literally applied for an attraction host job or attraction warden job, doing tickets for 3 days. And then I was offered the position of paranormal manager those 3 days later. So it was a very quick journey to becoming the paranormal manager. But it's based on my experience in working in very creepy tourist attractions, things like Halloween Horror Nights, the scare attractions. And obviously, as I mentioned, London Dungeon is all about history, hauntings, and grisly criminals. So it's all kind of was very lucky. Right place, right time. Yeah.
And also, I mean, obviously, you're obviously thoroughly involved in attractions, and like say scare attractions particularly. But did you have, before you before you joined Bodmin, did you have any personal feelings about the paranormal or
Mhm.
ghost sightings or anything like that before you
Yeah. I
came on?
had been on a paranormal evening at Bodmin Jail, and that's how I met Jem Treadwin, actually, who now works with me on the paranormal team. The place was, well, in regards to the paranormal, it was something that's always been in the background of my life ever since I was a little boy, and I had experiences that I simply couldn't explain at an age in which I really was too young to kind of make it up to scare people. Uh, and that has stuck with me forever. You know, for example, seeing my neighbor who used to own my house. I saw his mother at the bottom of my bed eating what I thought was like a tangerine or a Zatzuma in a rocking.
Right.
But it was the smell. It was how precisely I described her. That it hit home to him that that was actually her at the bottom of my bed. Stuff like that. So I've always felt that there was something out there that we couldn't necessarily explain, and another layer to life. It can't all just be um, everything which we see. Sometimes it's just a thought or a feeling that might cross over your mind in an old building, perhaps. But I ended up doing a master's degree actually in literature, and a massive part of that was hauntology, which is
Okay.
the study of things from the past demanding your attention in the present. It was a coin, or it's a term coined in 1993 by a French philosopher called Jacques Derrida. And the idea was that we are all haunted by things from our past, and now and again in our lives, they like to get hold of us and demand, as I say, demand our attention. And we are haunted by those things, even if they're political theories, our hopes, our dreams, our lost futures, the things that never happened for us, we're still haunted by them. So I've always been very much interested in the idea of ghosts and spectres and revenants. For sure.
Yeah, fantastic. So obviously, before we'll go into kind of ghosts and ghost sightings and whether we'll talk about all of that and people's experiences and things like that. But I think I'm just going to change the slide slightly. So anybody who's never visited Bodmin Jail can get a bit of a flavour in terms of what the place looks like and where it is, and it's kind of the actual Bodmin itself, the actual place. So let's go into the history of Bodmin Jail. So what can you tell me about the actual jail itself in terms of its history?
Yes, I mean, it's gone through many different lifetimes, many different reincarnations. Essentially, it's like Doctor Who of paranormal buildings. It's started out in 1779. It was the new county jail for Cornwall, because the original one in Launceston was, quite frankly, a pit called Doomsdale, it was known as, where people were literally left to rot, fatal fever wiping out all the locals. And of course, not only the jailers, but the jailers took it home to their families and the kids took it to school. So it was really important that we actually started taking care of our prisoners. And really, it's thanks to John Howard that we have a jail of the future at Bodmin Jail. We actually got them for example, there's John Howard.
There he is. There he is.
He was a
On the left.
philanthropist, a really lovely guy. He actually ended up a prisoner himself, a prisoner of war, because his boat got taken over by French pirates on the way
Oh, wow.
to help with an earthquake relief effort in Portugal. And so, because he had quite a visceral experience of what it's like to be a prisoner, when he came back to the UK, he completely revolutionized how we take care of our prisoners. So we have a hospital wing. Bodmin Jail was, I think, the first or one of the first to be built with a hospital wing. Also, we gave you a bath every 3 months. That was one of the things that John Howard was very much a part of ensuring that people got hygiene. So the jail was success initially. Things did go a little bit wrong during its lifespan. It was certainly overcrowded at different points. Middle of the 1800s, the population had increased so much that there was real need to expand the jail. And what you see now is the expanded Victorian jail. It's no longer that small Georgian jail that was the dream of Sir John Call, the man behind it all. Who actually was at one point the MP for Callington, which is where I live. Will live next door to, actually. So he had a weird link to me, which I didn't know about. The jail was then transformed, more cells, more prisoners, of course, and in the 1887, for example, the whole of the naval wing was extended. women and children moved out to a very small part, and the civil wing was increased in size, and the hospital was increased in size, and it ended up being a jail until 1927, when the last prisoner left.
This may seem like a silly question, but why is it called the Naval Wing? What was the link with the Navy then, or was there a link?
So originally, the naval wing was women and children in that wing. The youngest prisoner we had was like 6 years old. That was a boy who was accused of vagrancy, so essentially being homeless. So we did deal with some very young kids, but women and children moved out after there was a glut of naval prisoners, prisoners of war, anybody that committed crimes on the high seas. They were sent then to the naval wing. So yeah, that was very much due to the burgeoning and kind of maritime industry, especially in Cornwall, that we had, that they ended up there because it was the easiest place for them to get to. But yeah, as you can see the pictures of the young ones, we did have some very young kids.
It is shocking. I mean, if we were to modern eyes, it is shocking to see really young children being in prison, but that was the harsh reality of it, for, like I say, from the age of 6, like I say, hard labor. Was it this person here, Thomas Savage, 4 days hard labor plus 10 strokes of the birch for stealing iron. So I mean, in terms of punishments, you really didn't, the punishments were severe for things which we would regard as really quite minor.
Absolutely, yeah. And you could hang for incredibly minor things as well. I think there were 200 reasons that you could be hanged. For example, if I got into an argument with you, which I'm sure I wouldn't because you seem like an absolutely lovely chap, but say I ripped off your shirt pocket in an argument, I could hang for that.
Wow.
It was the Georgian bloody code that was still into practice until the mid to late 1800s. That was any reason we can give to make sure poor people are afraid of committing crimes and stealing from us rich. That was the main preventative measure that they used was hanging, sadly. But yeah, we did hang a 17-year-old boy, so a minor in today's climate, of course. And that was for stealing bread, I believe. I might not be 100% correct on that, but I know it was stealing something.
And obviously, over time, we'll have a couple of other photos of the cells and things like that. But obviously, like you say, it's been modernized since then. There's been some major changes to it, and obviously, you can still see the traditional, can't you? In terms of the old parts of the museum, the old parts of the prison, but also we now have the new as mixing with the old as well.
Yeah, and the jails, as I mentioned, like it's done that ever since it was decommissioned. In 1929, it was sold to a man by the name of Mr. Lee, who tried to blow it up for building material, and because it was so well built, it didn't happen. And he actually turned it into a rudimentary London Dungeons style attraction.
Oh wow!
So there you could actually see mock hangings and mock executions. Pay a couple of shillings to see a mannequin get hanged, basically. So it was kind of changing constantly in the 20s. Also, it was a nightclub for a while, the 99 Club, where you could meet Paul Daniels and the Wurzels.
I don't know if I want to do that.
No, I'm sure. I think the Wurzels certainly wouldn't be on the top of my list. But also, we had a stripper. A resident striptease artist,
wow,
by the name of Madame Melou, and she would dance with a massive boa constrictor. So when people sometimes turn around and go, "Oh, the jail's a bit theatrical now," well, not being funny, it's kind of was that in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, and then it became a museum again for a little while. But yeah, it's had of course a hotel now, so it's an amazing palimpsest of a building that's constantly rewritten, I think.
And the building that's in front on the image that you can see there, was that the main entrance to the prison, or was that for the staff or anything like that? Do you know?
Yeah, so it was actually staff administration wing. So that would have been your doctors, your nurses, the governors, the chief warden. They would have all worked in that building and kept their eyes out when the new prisoners were making their way up towards the screen, the left-hand side. So working out what kind of prisoner they're going to be. So all of the staff would have their eagle eyes trying to work out whether or not they're going to be a pain in the arse, or whether or not these prisoners are going to be easy to push over.
And this shot here, this is obviously the inside of what was the naval wing. And I think last time I was at Bodmin, this is how it looked. Actually, it was all kind of sealed off, ready for redevelopment, but this was how it all looked. I mean, at the state of disrepair, and had it been a while whilst it was in, had it been a while whilst it was in this state, then before it became developed into a hotel.
To the best of my knowledge, I think it was. I did hear reports of there being, even when it was a museum prior to the renovation, there being pigeons in some of the cells, and quite, even in, I think it was the 2006 that Most Haunted went there.
Oh, right,
and it was pretty derelict looking back then. Yeah, it's totally different now. We actually have roofs.
This is how it is now.
Amazing.
Look, I mean, the actual transformation, like Laurie's just said, transformation is mind blowing. It is absolutely stunning now.
It's beautiful.
That's millions of pounds worth of investment into Bodmin, isn't it? In terms of turning it into a hotel that looks like that now.
Yeah, it's 65 million pounds, I think, went into it. And the cell that you can see there says that yellow door is your entrance to your hotel room. That's actually 3 cells. So each hotel room is 3 cells big. So you are really given quite a lot of luxury compared to somebody that only would have shared, 1/3 of that space.
Yeah, I say original size. With the old mannequins that used to be there. But yeah, this gives you an idea. So obviously 3 times bigger than that, essentially, now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it was a case that when it was a working jail, I don't know why I'm moving a hand so violently there. I look a bit like a politician, but I'm pointing at a screen that only you and I can see, I think. The mannequins, for example, and represents that it would have been a single cell. So 1 person per cell, just to make sure that people didn't mix too much, if you get my meaning.
Yeah.
So it was quite lonely, even for that 6-year-old. That they would have been in their own cell in the women and children's wing all night and all day, apart from maybe the odd bit of outside time.
Yeah, and as obviously, before obviously it got redeveloped, it really did have a very strong atmosphere to it. I mean, does it still have that atmosphere? If you went today, even though it's been redeveloped and things like that, there are certain areas which have more of an atmosphere than other places in the prison.
In fact, that picture there is of the newly renovated jail. So that's in the naval wing part of the museum or the attraction. We've kept the whole bottom floor of the naval wing not as it was. There is lighting, theatrical lighting, sound effects, and even smell pods that try to invoke a sense of what it's like to have been in those cells, if you can imagine the smells, for example. Also just to help tell the tales of the people inside. So we've they've done a really, really good job at kind of making sure that we tell stories, but keep it interesting alongside keeping it as real as we possibly can do as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And obviously,
just moved on. Obviously, one of the first images you saw. This is outside, but you can still see. Walk up to these barriers and see where the original hanging pit. Obviously, there was, like you mentioned, there's 55 executions of Bodmin Jail within the walls. I mean, again, it's hard to kind of comprehend this, but it was a major attraction. The fact that these hangings that would take place.
Yeah, absolutely. It was for the biggest audience that we know of for a public execution. Would have been for the Lightfoot brothers, who, if you haven't heard of them, they were 2 footpads, essentially highwaymen without horses, who attacked and murdered a merchant on his way home from Bodmin to Wadebridge in the woodlands of Pencarrow House. And they bludgeoned him to death with the end of a pistol. So he was almost unrecognizable afterwards. It was a really violent act. But the 2 brothers were hanged together, a double execution, and we had up to 40,000 people in the audience that came to see that. Originally, people used to say, it's about 20,000, but it has since been revised up to 40,000. And it would be a party. It would be a pint and a pasty day for them. They would be drunk. And everybody that's ever been on a ghost walk has heard this fact, but that's where the term hangover predates or pre-originates from, because after the party, the guests would feel sorry for themselves, have big headaches, and of course be suffering hangovers because the hanging was now over at that point. It's
That's
one
amazing.
of
I see.
my
I
favorite
love
facts.
sayings like that. I love the origins of sayings like that. I mean, it's just awesome. Like I said,
Yeah.
and it's, you can walk, pretty close to the pit, and you can see below where they'd have, the tunnels which would have led to, obviously, when they removed the bodies and things like that, below it. So it's quite an atmospheric, even now, having seen, to see that. I mean, it's the original, and it's still quite eerie to see that the hanging pit, I've got to say.
Yeah, I mean, that particular hanging pit, it was only used twice in the history of the jail, for the last two hangings, because it was designed as a long drop at that point, all private, so it wasn't a public execution. 1901, and then finally the last person executed in Cornwall in 1909, right there. And it almost didn't happen, that last execution, because 3,000 people signed a petition for it not to happen, because they felt really sorry for the, about to say victim, but for the murderer.
Yeah.
And it was, again, a historic moment in Cornish history happened right there. And it was all undercovered until 2005. They actually lifted up the area. I don't know what they were doing, but they found that hanging pit, which is remarkable, because we still could be here today and not even know it was there.
Yeah, I mean, and like I say, it's still operable, it still
Yeah.
works, absolutely, in terms of, not that you're going to, but it does work,
You never know when you might need, when you might need it. Yeah, maybe we were just saving it for a special occasion or something. But it does still work. It's the only one of that type in the UK that still works. Yeah, so we're very
Fantastic.
lucky to have that, for sure.
Yeah, and I'd like to just bring it back to, just having a general chat. So, in terms of the history, like I say, it's got this very gruesome, and harsh history to this building. There are, however, there's obviously talk about ghosts and things like that. There have been ghosts attributed to certain individuals, which is quite a rare thing, actually, in terms of, it's been named, having, people believing there's an actual putting in a name to a particular ghost sighting. What
Yeah.
are the most famous ghost sightings that have occurred at Bodmin?
I would say some of the most famous and more regular occurrences would be Selina Wadge, for example, who murdered her young child, throwing them down a well into a pit, because that kid was disabled, and she'd entered into a new relationship where the man with all the money said, I will take care of your oldest son, but not your youngest son, because he's going to be a burden on my life, essentially. So she made the very unfortunate and difficult decision to actually get rid of that child. So she was hanged for infanticide. Selina has left a bit of an imprint in one particular area as well, which is quite exciting. It's the area in which she was hanged in, which is now a hotel corridor, by the way.
Nice.
That spot, she's been seen regularly approaching children. They say, who is the lady in the white dress, or who is the lady in the dress? They'll sometimes ask staff members who it was, wondering if it was an actress or an actor, rather.
Yeah.
And she'll often be quite comforting towards children. Also, pregnant ladies have felt her almost touching their stomach and whispering, or the presence of somebody whispering in that same spot, always independently in that same spot. Take care of them for me. So when we find stuff like that happens in the same place regularly, and it can be attributed to somebody we know for a fact actually stopped living right there, it becomes very hard to question away.
Yeah.
But another one, for example, would be Sarah Polgreen, who is often felt and seen and witnessed, at least, or in the courtroom, which used to be our hospital wing morgue. So in the attraction now, it's a fake courtroom with a fake projected Pepper's ghost effect, weirdly enough, judge. But that was originally where bodies were brought in after execution, and those that had died in the hospital wing, one of those bodies being Sarah Polgreen. So it was actually dissected for medical purposes, medical research in that particular area. So she is felt again regularly in that same spot, and it's always intriguing when, without any prior knowledge or seed planting, because we don't mention ghosts at all on our paranormal investigations, we let people, find out for themselves.
Yeah.
Sarah's name will come through in the same space.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, in terms of how is it that you're able to kind of identify that individual to a particular experience? But yeah, it's interesting that that name keeps coming up.
Yeah, it'll be a case of using it through Ouija, sometimes just intuition. Guests will go, the name Sarah's coming through, and they had no knowledge of who Sarah Polgreen once was, and it just happens to be that they're in her spot, essentially, where she was freshly executed and brought into. Yeah, but it's the stuff that reoccurs, and that's how I think we've learned to attribute the phenomena to the particular person. It's when it's Although lots of our guests have lots of wonderful, fanciful things that sometimes mean nothing to that particular spot, and that's always interesting as well, because that's the nature of the paranormal, as you well know.
Yeah, and there was one I think I read about on the website in terms of you'd expect it to the particular ghost, you'd expect it to be the murderer, but apparently there's one particular ghost that's meant to be the murdered girlfriend. I think is it a Catherine? I can't, but it's funny how you can say sometimes it's attributed to the person doing the murdering, and sometimes it's the victim in these kind of cases. So, is there any other areas or specific spots within the jail that, like you say, there's repeated experiences of people?
Yeah, of course. One spot is at the end of the naval wing, where the two gentlemen I mentioned earlier, the Lightfoot brothers, how they happened to be buried in that spot underneath the end of the naval wing before the extension was built over. That was where they were placed together, the two brothers, and they are seen regularly at the end of the naval wing, just stood there. And it's during the daytime as well as in the evening. Guests will just walk up to them thinking that they're mannequins in period outfits or actors. And as they get closer and closer, they're not there anymore. Another one which we have attributed to the same spot, which I don't know what, I'll be interested to know your opinion actually on stone tape theory. Is that something that maybe I'll ask after I explain what happened.
That's all right. It's a theory, one of many theories here, but
there's pluripotential of theories out there, whether or not some of them have any weight to them. But one thing that we would attribute to a potential stone tape theory would be our 5 p.m. ghost. It's usually, always when it's ever seen, is at 5 p.m. It makes its way down the stairs of the naval wing, and the only thing that's seen are a pair of legs belonging to a uniformed officer with keys jangling down by the side of his legs. Now, that's also the time at which the heritage team used to round up roughly in the naval wing on the old heritage tour before we've moved it a bit further forward, mainly to make way for paranormal stuff. So apologies to the heritage team for that. They would, some of them being very skeptical, would have their attention drawn. Guests would suddenly look over and you would see there a pair of legs standing on the stairs. It's quite remarkable that it's been seen so often. And again, sometimes by people that are incredibly skeptical at the same time. Also the same time in which the night duty officers would have come onto duty. So he is our night duty officer, always seen in the same place.
See, it's interesting. It's really interesting actually that a lot of the like you've mentioned, these things have been seen. These apparitions have supposedly seen, whether it's part apparitions or full apparitions, things like that. Whereas in my experience, most of the time it isn't. Things aren't seen, but they're heard. They're very. Are there particular people talking or sounds or anything like that, which is really common? Is there anything that's particularly common within the prison?
Yeah, in fact, Carl and myself, Carl, who's another paranormal investigator that we work with, and also a heritage guide, we both do the ghost walks with another lady by the name of Kelly, who's just starting to do them. I've got to name all these people just in case they give me glares when I next see them. But yeah, Carl's fantastic, and we've been locking up in the evening, and we hear the same noise. It's like a bump, a massive thud in exactly the same place after we've locked up in the quartermaster's store of the jail. Another thing that happens is one chap by the name of Shuffles, or Mr. Shuffles, as we've nicknamed him, because there is a shuffling sound. It like feet on a sticky bar floor is usually the sound that you get before he makes an appearance, or before something happens where somebody is taken surprise, essentially, of him. Not a very pleasant character, I must admit. Seems to be quite violent, but his kind of growling, sometimes shuffling, is always heard, usually prior to something pretty weird happening.
And do you ever get anything like poltergeist activity, or is anything kind of moved or thrown or anything, or is it mainly audible stuff and visual stuff that you tend to get?
We've had many a cat ball thrown off of a chair, and which I'm sure is something I never thought I would say. But yeah, we have regulars actually that come almost nearly every week to investigate the jail on our after dark evenings, and they bring 25, 30 cat balls, and sometimes they are just literally rolling across the floor, bouncing across the floor in an area where no living human has been. There's been equipment that's been thrown out of rooms. Also, stones being thrown at the back of people is a regular thing. So much so that guests will come up and go, "Somebody lobbed a stone at me in the naval wing. Who was it?" None of us have been doing that. In fact, I've got a little box of in the paranormal office of thrown objects, things like buttons and chalk and stones.
That's fantastic.
And
obviously,
bells.
obviously when people give you experiences, do you record them? Do you just note them down? Is there anything that has stood out to you that's from the many visitors that come to Bodmin Jail? Is there any particular one incident that you think, wow, that's really incredible?
It seems to be so regular that it's hard to pinpoint just one. But when it's somebody that kind of who doesn't really, how can I put it? They like to be convinced of things. When it happens to them, it's very exciting. But we do record everything down. We have a little WhatsApp chat afterwards. Usually I'll say, how did it go? If I didn't take the evening, I'll ask Carl, Maddie, and Jem, who are all of our paranormal team, how was it? And we get that, and I send it onto a shared file online. So everybody in the business, actually in the whole of the Tudor Hotels group, so whether that's Bodmin Jail or Redcliffe Hotel or Kent's Cavern, they can actually access that and have a look at what's happened in the jail. Sometimes it's video, audio, like EVP, or sometimes it's just people's feelings and thoughts in the jail. So yeah, it's very important for us to kind of catalogue it, because it informs what we do, and it actually informs the ghost walk as well. Because,
well, I was going to say, we're going to talk about obviously the actual scare attraction and what it looks like and the experience people have. But one thing I was just trying to was thinking about as you was telling me, like you say, that the number of people that it might experience something there. Do you think there may be a portion that just dismiss it because it's a scare attraction, therefore they think, oh well, it's just part of the show, almost it's part of the experience, it's not real?
So when I took over as the paranormal manager, I made a very clear choice to have, and this sounds like a businessman sort of thing, I apologize if this is really boring, but I tried to make a clear choice, because it does answer your question, of the products that I have available and that I create. So with our ghost walk, that was always going to be storytelling, and it's very much advertised as that. With Lights Out, the scare attraction, it's very much a theatrical horror. And with the investigations, which have gone through certain, now it's after dark, our paranormal investigations are done where we don't talk about ghosts at all. We literally give you a tour of the building and tell you what might have happened in these areas, but we certainly don't mention any paranormal activity. We don't plant seeds. So we're really, really honest with people and try to have a lot of integrity with those particular investigations. So I tried to make a very clear separation between the fun, the storytelling, theatre, and what is a genuine paranormal investigation.
And
take part of.
To be clear, it's something that you're not faking stuff.
No, it would do my head in. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if that was the case.
I'm just going to change this one just to give people an idea. Obviously, this is about the After Dark one, so it mentions I don't know if it's still Fridays and Saturdays, but it says that, you know, from, was it 9:30 to 2 in the morning? So
That's right.
it's,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good amount of time that you've got around the jail. I mean, just talk about, obviously, what kind of size groups go round, and what can people kind of expect whilst they go around Bodmin Jail.
Yeah, so the After Dark product is one in which it starts off with a very brief dark history tour, essentially, of the jail. So you can see the areas you're going to be working in before the lights are switched off. And then we gather together after the, as I say, quite a brief history tour and orientation. We introduce you to the equipment that we have. So K2 meters, Ouija boards. We have got spirit box, and things like trigger objects. Also, we like to do different things like the Singapore experiment, familiarization theory, so reenacting moments in the jail's history to see if that helps to act as a catalyst for ghosts. We run things like Ouija board sessions, transfiguration, and also we give the guests a lot of time where we break them up into small groups. So there might be like 4 or 5 of you in one group, and you've literally got a whole part of the jail, a huge area of the jail to yourself for about 45 minutes each time. So you get to see the whole place with quite a lot of spare, quite a lot of space. Also, we don't tend to lead you too much in those points, because then it could be accused that we're the ones getting excited by something rather than you having your own organic experience. Because the whole thing about our paranormal team is it's not about us at all. It's about you and your independent organic experience, because otherwise we're kind of leading you on at that point. So yeah, that was a very conscious decision that I made for the new direction of our department.
And like I say, it's worth just mentioning, obviously, with the new kind of scare attractions things, it's a very interactive, you know, event in terms of what kind of, obviously you've got the lights out and you've got the After Dark. Which, you know, to say,
so yeah, After Dark is the paranormal investigation. It's the scientific approach to it. You know, also spiritualist approach. As Jem actually mentions there, we do talk about the fallacies of the equipment, and also how humans can be fallible, or the idiometer effect, or all that sort of stuff, or idiomotor effect. But Lights Out is a pure scare attraction, and that happens every Saturday night between 6 p.m. and 8:30. Which is a 36-minute experience where you are plunged into complete darkness at times. There are live scare actors that won't touch you, but they'll get pretty close. And it's been designed to use what we already have, which is a beautiful building, and to so like I redesigned all the audio visual elements of what we already have, and finally got to use some of my passion for scare attractions and actually build something physically, which is really, really cool. And we've been nominated, or shortlisted and nominated, for 2 awards this year, and it's only opened up in February. So we're really pleased as a business and as a jail and as a group to have kind of got there so quickly. But yeah, it's a really big, fun, theatrical, silly, scary adventure. So yeah, you won't go into that thinking, well, this guy's got great paranormal integrity and honesty here. That's just magic. That is always meant to be.
And obviously, since you've worked there, I mean, have you personally experienced much, you know, in terms of whether that's the paranormal, what you regard as the paranormal, or things like that? You know, have you had a personal experience of the place?
Yeah. A very recent one was actually when I was out the back in the hanging area. Funnily enough, it's now a picnic area, because that's the way in which Bodmin Jail works. And Carl, my colleague, was literally at the other end of the building in administration wing, which you cannot hear a soul in admin. And from behind me in the empty pitch black building, my name was screamed out, "Joseph!" like that. And it was so clear. And I just panicked. I went flying in to try and see what had happened. I thought somebody had hurt themselves, or there'd been some kind of emergency of one of our guests. And I ran in. Not a soul was in there. That's a pretty regular one. I've had, within the first few weeks of us working there, a session of transfiguration in which I kind of lost my own personality and potentially developed another personality. Maybe some kind of partial submergence. I don't really like the term possession. I certainly don't believe in demons. But I told the whole group in front of me to F off. And that was in my second week as paranormal manager. So I probably didn't want to step on too many toes at that point. But it wasn't me that was speaking. It was something that was making me want to say that. So you can be caught out by the jail if you're not careful as well. She's a really powerful beast and building. If you approach her in the wrong way, I think she can certainly kick you up the arse.
I was going to say, it's funny that obviously it closed as a prison in the 1920s, and yet things obviously still seem to kind of be happening. Would you link it to a particular period of time? So would you think it's from the early history of the prison, or 1800s or 1900s? Whereabouts would you put these these apparitions from?
I think it's completely open. I think it could be at any point in history. In fact, we have one really famous ghost known as the melted monk, or the hooded monk, who is seen in one of our Victorian cells as a dark hooded figure. When his face is seen, it's described as having like a melted, burnt appearance. But Bodmin was a town of monks long before the jail was there. Also, there was a terrible fire that we think raged on that particular site long before the jail was even thought of, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And we never kept monks in the naval wing or the women and children's wing of the jail. So why is he there? So really, it can stretch back to pre-1700s. And I think even some very recent events, even personal events in my own life and other guests' lives, sometimes we find that people who may have just recently passed away make an appearance in some way at the jail, which can be incredibly significant. We need to be very careful, obviously, when that happens, because we don't want to influence something that maybe isn't there. We find there is no set answer to that. It's from day one to day 2024, 2024, or whatever.
So
that's a terrible answer.
Question here from Kev Kerr. So he's saying, have you seen any changes or rise in phenomena during the Saturday night investigation since starting the After Dark nights?
So I think so since Lights Out, maybe the scare attraction. I don't know if that's what Kev meant. But yeah, since doing the scare attraction, we found that some of the actors have had unusual occurrences. There is almost like an energy captured in the space after after it's been erupting with screams. And we then run an actual paranormal investigation straight afterwards. I don't know if it's actually increased or it's risen, the type of phenomena in the jail, but it certainly leaves an atmosphere for a short while afterwards. That's all I can say. But it's been like it. The jail kind of doesn't really change. There's always something happening. It just finally it's in different parts of the building. So quite often we have a team that comes regularly. They will go, "Oh, nothing much in here tonight," but admin's crazy. Nothing much in here tonight, but the courtroom's really exciting. Whereas the next day, absolutely nothing at all.
Wow. Yes, it's like just. I mean, that experience. It's very kind of very much like that. There's no real pattern to certain things. Dark Shadows saying, "What are you most proud of having achieved since becoming the paranormal manager of the jail?"
I'm really proud of the people I work with. I think I'm just so lucky that I've got the right people around me. Whether it's my managers, whether it's the heritage team, and people that work in the attraction, like the wardens. Also, just to be honest with you, picking the right people, like Jem Treadwin is absolutely incredible. She is an absolute rock. Carl Slaughter, he's got a brilliant surname, who's our paranormal investigator and a heritage guide, is basically my main man. And Maddie has got such a sweet and careful and very intelligent approach to the paranormal that I'm so comfortable in knowing that everybody in my team is going to act with honesty and integrity. There's going to be no show business, no funny business. So I'm really, really lucky. So I'm proud of putting together, if that sounds very arrogant, but putting together this team.
Yeah, and like I say, there's no kind of showboating or kind of fakery. It's just the very kind of matter of fact about things and putting across the right picture of the jail itself. Then,
yeah, because the star of the show is the jail. It's certainly not us.
yeah,
We are so blessed to have such an amazing, beautiful building with such a varied history as well. You never know when you're going to come across the ghost of a dead stripper, aka Madame Melu, our resident artiste in the jail, or somebody who may have murdered their whole family.
one here from Jane. Hi, one from Jane here. She's saying applies to any haunts, but can we be sure it's the said person or haunting that we see? Is it auto suggestion to see who they want, or do we see said spirits as they were? How many variations of the same haunting do you get? I mean, go for it.
There's a few questions in there. I will try and break it down, but yeah, we do get a lot of variations of the same haunting. So if for example, if one singular event happens, so somebody sees a pair of legs, for example, quite often there is a bit of ambiguity and a little bit of grey area between all the corroborated evidence, as it were, or eyewitness accounts. But I think that's actually reasonably healthy. For example, also as well, if it's the same person, we would always err on the side of caution to say it was the same person. For example, Sarah Polgry, and I know I mentioned earlier actually that we tend to pick her up in the same place. What can sometimes happen, and myself and Carl in particular have kind of honed this a little bit, is when we're running Ouija board sessions, we will answer questions that they could easily get wrong. Then we can work out whether or not it is potentially that person or not that person.
Yeah.
But I think to overall answer the whole question, we will never say yes and no. And that's probably the way in which we would approach that, is by never saying, yeah, it's definitely her or it's definitely him.
One from here from Laurie, and she's saying, I was in the naval wing in 2013 and was leaning against the old gate that was there. I felt a firm hand pressed on my back between my shoulder blades. Do you have any idea who that may have been?
Leaning against the old gate that was there, Naval Wing 2013. So long before my time working at the jail. But I think having a press in the back of the shoulder blades is very similar. I'm not going to say yes or no. But Mr. Shuffles in Cavern number 2, who has sometimes been seen and felt in different parts of the jail, we attribute him to potentially punching a young lady in the back with what she felt like was an old-fashioned heavy iron right between the shoulder blades. So that kind of rings a bell. But I mean, it could have been anybody. It could have been our melting monk, because he can be quite touchy-feely, from what I've heard. He likes to rub people's stomachs and backs, and maybe he's after something in death that he was not afforded in life, is our monk. Bless him.
Yeah. And one thing I was going to mention, actually, obviously there's been huge renovations to the prison within the hotel, the scare attraction, and big changes. Now, there's been very much it's quite common to be reports of when there have been structural changes to a place, it kind of produces more activity in some way, shape, or form. Do you think that's true? Do you think, have you experienced that yourself in terms of, or do you think that's happened with the prison, or do you think it's always been like that?
I often wonder whether or not the prisoners themselves, considering it was running for 150 years as a prison, whether they've actually experienced paranormal phenomena, considering that the massive part of the naval wing is actually built over the unmarked graves of up to 51 people. I do wonder whether or not it's just always been that way. In fact, even to answer your question better than I already tried to embark upon just then, the jail constantly changing is maybe keeping something alive. I like to think because it's gone through so many different lifespans, as being a London dungeon style attraction, a hotel, restaurants, nightclubs, casino. Also, there are rumors that it was a place where we kept things during certain wars, but I'm not going to say yes or no to that. Yeah. We've had 35,000 prisoners moving through there as well in its lifespan. So has that not kept something going? If ghosts are energy, maybe the fact that we've constantly got tourists coming in and there's nightclub
Yep.
parties and meals in the chapel restaurant, maybe they're feeding off of that. Yeah. So in answer to that question, yes. Just, I can see your face, Justin, going like, "Shut up, Joe."
No, not at all. Not at all. No. I'm thinking about the next question along actually, because there's so many, and also I've got to just, I'm reminding myself to talk about the Paracon that's going to happen in November as well, is what I'm also thinking about.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a second. So, Dark Shadows putting, when investigating or roaming the jail out of hours, are there certain areas that you are more nervous to be in, whether due to paranormal experiences or just getting bad vibes?
Yeah. My voice went really high then. I think the village and the malls, in particular, those are the big set pieces of, or two big set pieces in the Dark Walk, which is the kind of theatrical element of the attraction now. The moorland in particular is only a stone's throw away from where 51 people were hanged. I don't know whether that's me having that that preconceived notion of it being a place of death that's causing me to feel that way. But I do feel as though there's always somebody with me or very close to me in the moorland. That's also where I heard the voice scream my name. So when I'm alone, locking up, although we always try to make sure there's at least two people on site, it can be really nerve-wracking for sure.
Jem, who obviously you work with, has just put, all the hanged prisoners are still there, buried in the grounds or under the floors. Is there obviously a particular area or zone of the prison that was, where they were buried, basically? And does that have more activity than other places, do you think?
Yeah, so the naval wing was extended over that burial ground in 1887. So there are potentially up to 51 prisoners buried in that area. Now you can walk over it, and they're buried 3 feet underneath where your feet are. Every single one of them also is buried with their feet pointed towards the big gatehouse entrance, which doors were locked traditionally of the gatehouse entrance. So if their spirits ever tried to build up enough energy to try and leave the jail, they would meet that shut gatehouse entrance. So they bounce straight back in, and the jail has you in body and spirit, in life and death. You're there forever. So it's almost like a cruel taunt, the way in which they are buried, as I say, just beneath your feet in the area of the end of the naval wing. It's a really clear area as well. If any of the guests or anyone listening tonight visits the jail, even during the day, you can see where the walls change from a very rustic-looking Victorian wall to a nice smooth wall with a red stripe. And that red stripe is essentially all burial ground.
Wow.
So yeah, and we did have a seance down there. So yeah, we do tend to do a little bit more down there.
This is not a question. This is literally just kind of to big you up. As you're saying, Dark Shadows, and I have to say the Dark Walk is the best immersive, non-actor led experience I've ever done, and I'm saying that as someone who loves immersive attractions. So there you go.
I completely agree. It's the reason that I applied for a job there, is because of the Dark Walk.
And obviously, I said I wanted to talk about the Paracon. This is going to be your first. You're going to be hosting a paranormal convention November.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What more can you say about it?
We've got some really cool guests. I think one of them is watching probably now. Kev Kerr will be coming. We've got hopefully the team from Haunted Magazine. We've also got Evelyn Hollow. I was about to say somebody I know isn't coming then. That would have been a bit embarrassing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Dr. Kate Charrell will also be there at the jail, which I'm really, really excited about.
I think Corinne is saying me.
Oh my God, I nearly forgot.
No, you don't forget that.
She'll crucify me if I said nearly forgot. But nobody can ever forget Corinne. And the whole team from Jamaica in Paranormal would be there to run some special investigations with us, I'm sure, along with Kev and hopefully with Evelyn and Kate Charrell as well. Also, we have a M.R. James storyteller for those that are not maybe into the paranormal so much as ghost stories. There's kind of something for everyone. And I'm sure we'll be having, we're going to try and change the whole of the Dark Walk into our marketplace. So there'll be trade stands and entertainment and special black carpet arrival the night before. So it's going to be spectacular. We're going to invest an awful lot of hopefully creativity in making it special,
Yeah.
with some weird things. And I don't know what Corinne said there, but Joe, no cakes. I don't get the reference, Corinne. But obviously, it means something to Corinne. Last time I met her, she didn't bring me a cake. She gave me a massive Victorian Bible, which is now taking up most of my bedroom. So
Well,
you never know what you're going to
needs.
get. Heaven knows what I get at Paracon. But yeah, you can book your tickets now. There will be more information coming out very soon, including a schedule of events.
Fantastic. And obviously, we've only got a couple of minutes before we finish. There've been some, like you said, there's been some massive changes to prison over time. Where do you see the future for the Bodmin Jail, going forward?
I think the future of Bodmin Jail is embracing what it is, and the attraction and the hotel, I think, is doing that. In fact, we're just actually working with the hotel, which is sort of a different side to the business. For the very first time, we're actually bringing together the hotel and the attraction to do Paracon and to actually sell paranormal packages so people can have the ultimate holiday in a haunted hotel, stuff like that. So I think that the jail embracing its darkness, its dark history, and its ghosts is actually going to be the way forward. There are lots and lots of plans in the work, which I'm well aware of and have sleepless nights over, because we are going to be doing stuff in the basement. I won't say much more than that, other than be prepared. It's going to get weird and scary, hopefully. Almost, I nearly said stuff I shouldn't say because it's still under wraps.
I just want to touch on the basement, actually. You said obviously the a lot of the naval wing has been, done out in as a hotel. It's very plush. It's lovely as it was. Just paint a picture of what the basement is still like.
So the basement is the untouched part of the jail. It's, for health and safety reasons, not accessible anymore to the public, but we're going to change that very soon. The attraction's very much a theatrical space and beautifully manicured and very, very cleverly done. The hotel is absolutely gorgeous. So it's nice to have that spot where it's kind of untouched and grisly without any kind of special effects. So we're going to be using that, hopefully, fingers crossed, soon, hopefully in the summer, for an experience that people can have throughout the day and throughout the night, down in the basement, potentially into the morgue, if you will. So it's going to be fun. Let's put it that way.
I'll just put on, but before we finish, I've put this on earlier, which is your Twitter, basically, on X. It's not Twitter anymore, you know what I mean? But in terms of if they want to kind of follow you and get progress updates and things like that, is there any other place that people can contact if they're interested in visiting Bodmin Jail or the actual scare attractions and stuff? So
Twitter's a great place. Jem Treadwin, I must give the shout out, actually runs my Twitter on there. She's my PA, bless her. But she knew that I'd probably pass out or pass away if I had to actually deal with Twitter. Instagram is somewhere that I do actively send stuff, and you can chat with me on there. I like to collaborate with people on there, especially in regards to some of our events and stuff like that. So that's Joseph S. Carter. You'll find it. It's all there. Just look for the fat guy in the jacket, and that'll be me. But but you can also just find me on the jail's website. My contact details are on there if you want to come and book a special event. We do private hire, and also just want to have a chat about ghosts. I might be interested in talking to you. I said might because you might be absolutely crazy.
Right. I think what we'll do is we'll leave it there. I'll just say thank you so much for coming on, Joseph. It's been an absolute pleasure, and your the way you kind of paint a picture of the actual jail and the history and things like that has been fantastic. And the ghost sightings have been really, really interesting, and it's great to kind of hear it from somebody who's listens to these eyewitness accounts all the time and can paint a picture of specific areas and specific ghosts and things like that. I need to go back down to Bodmin Jail. I do need to go back down to Cornwall. It's a bloody long way, but I don't care, just because it's a fascinating place.
Where are you, by the way?
I'm in Lincolnshire, so I'm
All
a
right,
bit
yeah.
of a
So you have got a bit of a drive. Yeah.
yeah, it's a bit
There's
of
no
a drive.
excuse though, because I was up in Blackpool like I'm in Blackpool nearly every weekend just having fun. So yeah, you can definitely come down, and we'll sort you out with some fun and
Oh,
some
bless
ghosts,
you.
hopefully.
Yeah, that'd be good. I need to get out more. I need to kind of need to experience these places more and get myself out investigating again a bit more. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And like I say, if anything weird and strange happen, you're more than welcome to come on and regale us with other things that are going on and things in the future as well about Bodmin Jail.
Lovely.
So
That would be
yeah,
fantastic. Thank you very
thank you so
much.
much, and I'll speak soon. Right, I'm just going to finish off just by chatting to you guys at home, just to kind of underline, huge thanks to Joseph for coming on. Next week I've got Steve Meara and Barry Fitzgerald. If you might remember, they're him from Ghost Hunters International and things like that. Talking to us about their latest thing they've been doing, which is called Project Doorway, which is very much talking about UFO sightings, cryptid sightings, think Skinwalker Ranch territory here. That's going to be an absolutely fascinating talk with them. So that's next week. And just to underline again to everybody watching, thank you so much for getting the channel over. If you've subscribed, over 1,000 subscribers, I'm so happy and so pleased. And again, if you're one of those people that became a member, I'm going to put their members on the bottom of the screen just to thank them again. Here they are. So Cynthia Boss, Rosie Rose Ray, Kay Evans, Lolcat, Brett Walker, Jem Treadwin, thank you, and Mike Lowry. Thank you so much for becoming members to the channel. It means a huge amount, and yeah, it's I shall see you next week. So with Steve and Barry. Until then, thank you so much, and I'll say goodnight, and hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. All right, guys, bye bye.